Welcome to the Wicked Ones podcast. This is Jen.
And this is Tara.
What is new with you this week?
Ooh, new with me. not a ton, as you can well imagine. But I do have a good flip the script for later, for after.
That's
so
exciting.
Yeah, I've got some exciting news that I'm going to share on behalf of like really good friends of ours that I'm just super excited for because 2020 has been their year, and I think everybody needs to hear about a family who is thriving in 2020.
That's good because it's rare.
I'm living vicariously through all of their fun and excitement and joy.
Please share because I want to live through them too. I actually I have a really crazy story that I'm going to share with permission from my coworker. And I didn't tell you this. Yes, I didn't tell you earlier because I knew that you would appreciate it. So a coworker came up to me the other day when I was at work and was asking me a little bit like, what's the podcast? What are you guys up to? What are you doing? Jen, you always have your hands in so many different things. What's this now? She's super sweet. And I've always admired her. She's been very much a mentor to me. So for her to show interest in what I was doing was very flattering.
That's awesome.
And then she shared a really just brave story about her daughter. So her daughter works in physical therapy, and she works at the Aquatic Physical Therapy Center in Crystal Lake. Okay. And she got to work one of the mornings in the past couple weeks. I didn't get exact dates. And when she got there, her boss had told all of the employees that they needed to go and find a missing little girl. They were to canvass the area.
Oh.
So her boss's husband works for the fire department. And there was a missing little girl that was taken from a grocery store.
Oh, wow.
Just happened. Minutes.
Okay.
So she told all of the employees there, this is what she looks like. Everybody needs to go out and canvass the area. So they split up and she went on foot. So her daughter is 20 years old and went on foot to find a missing child. And she finds her over the shoulder of a man and follows them into the woods.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
My heart, when she was telling me this story, I thought was going to come out of my chest.
Yeah. Oh.
She said the little girl was not crying. She seemed very comfortable, but the man was carrying her kind of up high on the chest so she could see her face, knew the description, called 911, stayed on the phone with 911. Three Oaks Forest Preserve in Crystal Lake.
Oh my gosh, that is so close.
Followed them through there.
Oh.
While on the phone, telling the man to stop with the child. On the phone with 911, the 911 dispatcher telling her follow him, telling her like what orders to give him, blah blah blah.
Okay. Oh wow! So the 911 dispatcher was telling her what to say.
Yeah, cops and. She was giving a description of the surroundings and whatever. Cops came.
I'm sure it felt like a lifetime walking through there waiting for them to come.
I can't even imagine.
Oh, wow.
I can't even imagine. But the police came and the little girl was rescued. And this was her father there was a custody dispute of some sort. I don't know the whole story. I couldn't find anything online. I don't know the whole story, but he had taken her without permission.
How many Amber Alerts have you gotten on your phone and TV in the last week?
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's been crazy. The kids are like, what is going on?
Oh, and then so you want the tier 3 notice today?
Oh, yeah.
I was sitting in traffic. You could hear everyone's phones going off in sequence. It was disgusting.
Really?
Oh, it was, you could hear it coming from people's cars. But anyways.
But thank God when there's an Amber Alert and everyone in traffic is knowing what to
go for. But to hear it is just so. There's like a stop in time.
What's it like to be in traffic? I can't remember.
Fill me in. You don't know. Oh, it's pretty glorious. So I just thought that was an incredible story. I mean, her daughter's only 20, and of course she was.
It's amazing. She didn't know that was the kid's father. That could have been some crazy.
Nobody knew. And I told her, my coworker, she was concerned too because she was saying, what if he would have What if he was trying to lure her into the woods? She chased him into the woods.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally would have done it too.
Lure her into the woods. Yes,
we would have.
Yes.
We would have been like,
because you're on a mission.
Save that girl.
Yes, yeah. So then that's what her daughter said. She said she knew. She didn't even think about the consequences. She didn't think about whether he had a weapon or what his motive was or why. She just knew that was a little girl and she was taken and.
Yeah, if she could save her life, and you don't know what situation she's in, but yeah, that's what I was thinking when you were telling me this. I wasn't expecting it to be the father. I was expecting it to be somebody with.
And I don't think she found that out until later.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Crazy.
Good for her. So, way to go.
Shout out.
That's amazing.
That's amazing. That is a brave person who has set out to do great things. And of course, working in physical therapy. Mm-hmm. And her mom, I know she has to be an amazing person anyways.
Aww.
But, you know.
Way to go.
That's...
Way to go. I love that story. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for waiting to share it with me because that was...
It's not what you were expecting, right?
No, that's not what I was expecting.
When she said she chased him into the woods, I thought I was going to throw up.
Oh, God.
Because it reminds me of a scary movie. Like, don't chase him up the stairs. Don't chase him into the woods. Don't go to the dark parts.
Yeah. Wow. That was a good one. That's a good opener to our bonus episode that we don't know which way it's going to go. It's going to be... It's gonna be interesting, but you know what? Why not? We're new. We're kind of finding our spot and what we want to do. And so what we figured we would do is, because this month has 5 weeks, each of us usually take 2 stories a month. And now we're like, what can we do for a bonus? So today we're gonna do female male serial killers, the difference. We're gonna talk a little bit about how they differ and why, and just a few little tidbits here and there. Kind of like our little, here's a cool side note. This whole episode is going to be full of side notes.
The whole episode is a side note.
It's just one big side note. Yeah. So, did you want to start with your study?
Yeah. So, one of the first things that caught my attention was a study that was done at Penn State. So, Penn State University psychology professor, Marissa Harrison, she set out and was originally documenting the means, motives, and histories of female serial killers, primarily in the United States in the past 200 years. And she had never really considered how little was documented about female serial killers until she was approached by a curious undergraduate in 2014. She brought that interest with Penn State colleague Adam Jordan Gott and Albright College's Susan Hughes. They collaborated and they did a new study comparing female and male serial killers and looking at those differences from a evolutionary psychological perspective.
And it's cool because I remember seeing just its and bits in my research from this study, and I know where you're going, and I love it.
So it sounds like, I mean, it's a mouthful, but it really is very basic and cool.
Just down to basic instincts, exactly, is what you're...
Yeah. They examined, through the ideas and concepts of evolution, the differences in male and female behaviors in crime. And they found they have a powerful correlation with the primal hunter-gatherer theory.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think you said you had found that as well.
I did, yeah. Oh, yeah. I found a lot of information on, why. And when you put it together, it just goes.
It makes so much sense.
It does.
And this goes against everything that was said by famous FBI profiler Roy Hazelwood. He was a pioneer in the time.
Oh, yeah, he was. Mm-hmm.
And in the beginning, he was very famous in sexual profiling of criminals. And he was quoted saying, "There are no female serial killers."
And I wrote that down in mine, too, because I thought that was interesting. And that was a popular myth for a really long time. That was as late as 1998. That wasn't that long ago, where they were like, there's no female serial killers. You can't count XYZ back there. They don't count.
They don't count, no. Which we found that although female serial killers are really rare, they do exist. And they make up about 15% of the serial killers. So.
Well, and I think, in my opinion, female serial killers, from what I've learned during our research, are almost scarier than like the stalker, ripper, slasher guy that you're kind of on the lookout for. This is like your sweet next door neighbor Sunday school teaching nurse
they're very cunning.
It's scary.
Yeah. So funny you say that because one academic study suggests that the very first serial killer ever noted in history was a woman by the name of Loquista. Loquista. And she was a serial killer and assassin in Rome over 2,000 years ago.
Really?
And she was famous for her skill with poisons.
And that's typically what we see with female serial killers. Well, because, and I think from what I've read too, a lot of it is because they don't have that sexual drive when they're killing. So they just want to get it over with quick, easy, not very messy.
We're going to move on after we get what we need.
They have, they have other things that they're concerned about.
Yeah.
Yeah. Human life to them is nothing. It's like a piece of trash. They don't even think twice. It's not a big deal for them.
Because their motive is different.
Very different.
So they used previous data that they collected on 55 male and 55 female serial killers who committed their crimes in the United States between 1856 and 2009. In the study, a serial killer's crimes were defined as premeditated, intentional killing of 3 or more victims with a cooling off period between killings of at least 1 week. Mm-hmm. So they made sure their study was pretty, accurate across the board. Yeah. It wasn't random.
Mm-hmm. That's good. And something that I would totally expect from you. I was really...
The statistics?
Yes. Because when you started going and you're like, this is really great because they have, this number and it's in 2 and it's 55 and 55. And I was like, oh my God, this is where Jen's science totally geeks out. And she's very excited.
I can't control myself. It's terrible. I'm like, and then they said at 27%.
Oh my God. It's amazing because you've got like all this statistical data and I'm like, yeah, I looked at like 10 different things and I wrote all sorts of crazy side notes and I'm really excited to share.
It's okay. That's
disorganized versus organized.
This is when we work well together. Yeah. So out of the 110, there were very obvious differences in the main characteristics of the male and female serial killers. One being a majority of the female serial killers came from middle or upper class backgrounds and were college educated, opposed to the male serial killers who were less educated and came from lower class backgrounds. Nearly half of the women used poisoning to murder their victims, while men preferred asphyxiation or shooting. Mm-hmm. Which we kind of...
Yeah.
I mean, in our experience of studies, we find that very accurate, right?
Oh,
Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely. Poison usually, even, asphyxiation or drowning for women is common depending on who you're looking at in history. I know they had a very specific target group that they were studying, but yeah, for sure. And then, with men, it's more from what we've learned because, I'm an expert now. After I read all of these articles, I know everything. So
everyone else's expertise
yes,
came into your brain.
It's all right here and I'm just throwing it at you. But I thought that was interesting. And then of course men use, right, their brute force. They want to shoot or strangle. Well, because theirs is more of a sexual component. And for them, even if they're not raping a victim, getting that sexual
control,
right, it's just a different, it's just their motive is just very different. And you can see that in the way that they kill. The men almost need that bludgeon, that they want to see the terror in their victims' eyes and they want to.
They're kind of messy.
Yeah.
Where women don't want to make a mess. They don't want to clean anything out.
Mm-hmm. And I almost wonder for most of the serial killers, not that I read this, but it's almost probably like a high that they can't control and they don't care if they're making a mess. They probably look at it after and go, oh, it probably wasn't a great idea, but yeah, of course, women are more calculated, so.
They are. So the study found the biggest difference between the two serial killer groups appeared into the victims that were chosen. 90% of the female serial killer's victims were someone familiar to the killer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Men were much likely to target strangers.
Yep. Yeah, that's what I read too.
85% of male serial killers' victims were strangers, opposed to less than 15% of female serial killer victims are strangers. Mm-hmm. And this very much in supporting the hunter-gatherer theory, 65% of male serial killers were found to stalk their victims before murder, opposed to 3% of female killers.
Because they're stalking their prey. They're hunting.
Yeah, they're hunting.
And women are gathering resources, right?
Yeah.
Like money and different things for profit.
So female serial killers are gatherers.
Yeah.
They're 3 times more likely to be motivated by financial gain compared to male serial killers. The financial gain is what represents the gathering of resources or the collecting. The male serial killers are hunters because they stalk their victims, and they are 10 times more likely to have a sexual motivation in their crime, which obviously is a poor form of mate seeking. It's really not a good thing to kill your mate,
No.
but it still goes along the line of hunting and kind of being that dominant.
Well, it's almost like people who are, well, for male serial killers, sure, maybe they have that mate, but it's disposable mate. They have to relive that fantasy over and over with different people. It's very strange. Or in the case of Ted Bundy, right? He found someone that he didn't want to kill. Maybe, I don't know, right?
Yeah, no, I totally, I get it. It's crazy. I never even thought about it in the hunter-gatherer aspect until I read this article, and it totally makes sense. And then I just kind of made a couple notes about the female serial killers. So let me know if this was or wasn't on your list, or if you have anything else to add.
Yeah.
So female serial killers they come from fairly mundane backgrounds. Their primary weapon is poison, but they also are known to smother, burn, choke, or bludgeon.
Yeah.
Their victims are often newborns, children, elderly, or ill people.
I read that too, yeah.
Because they're usually caregivers. Then, of course, their victims are most often those who knew them and trusted them.
Which is just...
So
nearly just the worst part of it.
Yeah, nearly all of their victims are someone they know, or even unfortunately, their own family members.
Oh, yeah. Well, look at the giggling granny, right? Yeah. I mean, she didn't hesitate to kill anyone. It's like they don't have that maternal instinct. I mean, obviously, but they don't show any connection with anybody, right? Like, they don't seem to really... Again, it goes along with what I read about them just not valuing human life.
I agree 100%, because they're after that reason, what I wrote down. So they usually have justification, at least in their mind.
Yes.
There's a reason behind their killing. It may be money or convenience. Somehow they will benefit from that death. And they're willing to make it happen. So it might be to get a spouse out of the way, or it might be out of even revenge. But somehow in their head, they can justify it and not lose sleep at night.
Absolutely. And even if they gain something that we would think is so small and just you couldn't, fathom the reason, it just, in their mind, there must have been another reason, like you said, revenge, or just, one less mouth to feed, or who knows what goes through their minds.
However they can justify it, but in their head, they think it's okay. And most of them are described as having above average attractiveness, which they use to elude suspicion, because they're pretty and they can get by. And they also take on jobs that are very stereotypical feminine. So people don't question them because they're helpers, like you said.
Exactly.
Nursing,
they're teaching. They're nursing. They're caring for people. How could they possibly have hurt someone?
But this gives them access to vulnerable victims.
Yes, it does.
It's very, very typical. And then one example that I found was the Death House landlady.
Ooh, I saw a little blurb on her.
Did you see? Yeah. Oh, Dorothea Montalval Puente. She was a grandmotherly looking woman who ran a boarding house for the elderly. But she would take all of their Social Security checks and cash them for her own use and kill all who complained.
Wow. And when was this? Did it say what year?
Oh, you know what? I could probably find it.
Because I was actually wondering what year it was.
I can go back and look. I didn't write down the year.
Well, if you see it while we're talking.
Yeah, I'll look at it while we're talking. But it was crazy because she was praised for her kind heart. But she was
Uh,
taking everyone's checks and
yeah.
taking them straight to the bank.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not surprised. She fits the mold.
So, in all reality, although female serial killers they're rarely studied, they are fairly common, and the fact that we think that they're not capable of being serial killers is a really unfortunate misconception.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Until it's too late.
So, our societal unwillingness to believe that women are capable of these things lets them get away with their crimes.
Yeah. Well, and like you said, and again, I hate to bring up Ted Bundy again. I don't know why it's like in my mind, but when you said the attractiveness and how they get to elude because of the way a certain way that they look, and it's people like that that people think they're attractive, they're upstanding, they have a job and they drive a nice car. I mean, I don't know if his car was considered nice back then, but it was probably clean, and he had a good job and house, and he had a girlfriend, and he didn't look like your suspect.
No, and these are the things that allow women to get away with murder and get away with their crimes much longer.
Mm-hmm.
And this article said on average, female serial killers are able to evade arrest for twice as long as men.
Mm-hmm.
That's a long time.
Yeah.
And this is probably a funny side note because this is full of side notes, but this reminds me of the Bernstein Bears book that we read.
Oh, wow. I can't. How?
Because we talk about bad apples.
Okay.
So I'm always talking to my kids about how just because someone looks pretty or well put together or they have a nice car does not make them a good person. How a perfectly good apple, when you cut it in half, like in the Bernstein Bears book, is rotten on the inside.
Yeah. So when you were doing the artwork for the Wicked Ones, you were like,
I was totally thinking of the apple.
the Bernstein Bears.
I was channeling the Bernstein Bears and all things wicked because it's a delicious apple that's rotten.
That's awesome. No, I love that.
That's so funny. But I always, one thing I always tell the kids too, things aren't always what they appear, right? Yeah. And I think that goes really along with female serial killers.
It is, and it's definitely a good thing to talk about today with social media. And I find that we talk about this sometimes, right? It's the people that are out there saying how happy and awesome their life is on social media are usually the ones that are struggling the most. And the people that are quiet usually doing all right. Yeah. Like the people that are like, I love my husband 90 times a week.
So we're getting divorced next week. Yeah. And not to knock divorce or anything, but
I hate to.
I feel like.
No, but
the persona.
Everybody's shocked, right? You're like, what? You guys had date night 7 days a week, and you were always, and then you're, because then it makes you feel bad going, oh God, we haven't had a date night in 7 months, and here they go,
I was like,
every night
what's my husband look like?
Yeah, and then you find out all is not well, and really,
it's not always about outward appearances can be very, very misleading, and like I said, women serial killers, they very much take advantage of that. And then a couple notes I wrote about males, and then I'll let you tell me a couple of your stories. So obviously we talk about how male serial killers hunt, right? They stalk. Yeah. So that very much reflects the ancestral tendencies of a hunter. And the single biggest driver for male serial killers is sexual compulsion. So they don't necessarily need to rape their victim to have a sexual component or drive in the crime.
No, they just get off on the torture and the fear and the control and the domination and the power.
Yes, the humiliation, the sexual, like the violence. Yes, very much. And then male murderers are usually compelled to kill more than once, whereas female killers, they're motivated for, like I said, that monetary composition. So I'm
sure there's more of a cooling off period for them. Yes,
their cooling off period is much longer than a male.
Which is probably another reason they evade capture.
Right. And males, there's usually, in some aspects, it's a little bit harder because a lot of times the victim isn't even important, right? Because it's a stranger. So that, opposed to a female, obviously females we don't look at because we don't think they're capable of these things, but then male have that where they kind of evade their crime a little bit longer because they're more likely to attack a stranger. So there's no putting two and two together. People are wondering why this poor woman was attacked on the street.
Yeah. So you're
If that
right.
makes
In
sense.
terms of that, you would almost think that women serial killers would go down faster because you're like, it's your husband and your child, and then your mother-in-law.
Yeah.
But now they're like, here's a casserole. We're so sorry for you. He had the flu, and you know
That's
what I mean?
so sad. Yes.
It's crazy.
Because they I feel like they are more manipulative in that way, where they can gain the trust, like the giggling granny.
Right. Or it's not even on somebody's radar. They thought, oh, that guy had a heart attack, and then something else happened. You know what I mean? I mean,
I think it's less likely now than it was then. But yes, absolutely.
Oh, for sure. Now everything's in question, but as it should be.
So I talked a lot about statistics.
Oh no, that's okay. But that's your love.
So, I apologize to everyone who had to go through my statistics.
No way. There's tons of people out there, I bet, that are going to listen and be like, oh, she's speaking my language. They're getting excited about those statistics.
Tara has fun facts.
I do have crazy. I mean, I don't. They're all over the place, but so some of the things that I wrote down that we didn't cover, and I'll just kind of go through here and look around. But I do know one thing I noted that I thought was interesting is that men tend to be given names like Slasher, Night Stalker, Jack the Ripper, whereas females tend to get the cutesy names, like Jolly Black Widow, or, even Belle, I wrote down, she was Hell's Princess. I mean, come on. And
that is so true.
That's just one of the things that I thought was really interesting. And I think that just kind of goes along with what you said about society not wanting to think that females are capable of doing something like that. I mean, they just don't, So I had that, and then of course, I wrote down about how women tend to kill men who are emotionally and physically close to them, like a Charlotte's Web killer. And I thought that was an interesting term, something that Dad and I were talking about. And he's like, oh, like a Charlotte's Web killer. And I was like, wait, what? Because I hadn't heard that term before. And he said, yeah, you lure them into your web. And then I was imagining like the spider eating this fly. And I was like, oh, God. But it makes sense, right? Because you got the children and the elderly, and it's just so sad that they don't discriminate, and they can't feel that empathy and love. Like we can't wrap our minds around how they're able to do these things, right? It's just
it's
crazy,
completely insane.
One other thing that I had too was, remember our awesome Girls' Day, Snack Day, the very first one that kind of happened by a happy accident, and we watched Sharp Objects. So those of you who are out there that read that book and maybe thought, such a good series on HBO, please go watch it if you've read the book and you don't know what I'm talking about. It was good.
Read the book before you watch the show.
Always read the book first, right? Always.
But it's so good.
Yeah, it was really good. And in that situation, the mom, she had that Munchausen's by proxy. And so in that instance, if you don't, for those of you who don't know what that is, it's where a caregiver, usually a mom, makes their children or the people that they're caring for sick for sympathy or attention. And if that child so happens to die, a little bit more attention and sympathy goes right along with it, So
I mean, no matter, even if they're just caring for this chronically ill child, just woe is you, is so
all
sad.
The attention from the hospital, the nurses and the doctors, and then the people in the community.
Yeah,
and they thrive on that, which is just sick and awful. But that's a thing.
Yeah.
So that's another one that I kind of wrote down that was interesting. And then of course, like couples that kill, usually it said that usually females are the submissive ones. So in the, I don't know, you remember the Gallego murders? I didn't dive too deep into it, but the wife who was the other half of the team, I do remember her saying, even though she went to prison, I mean, she was a part of this whole team, and they were, taking in these young women for her husband to rape and torture. Right. And
did they live under the bed or something like that? Is that this one?
I almost think they were like traveling in a van. I didn't dive into the story, so I'm probably telling you wrong.
Yeah, and I'm probably blending it with a couple other the same stories.
It could be, but I just remember her saying that she was one of the surviving victims. She was saying that, I don't know how she explained that away, because she obviously was in it with him, but again, she was probably the more submissive and just went along with whatever. And then you have, people like Rosemary West, who I know you want to cover one day.
I do.
And I think that would be a great one for
sick,
you.
Yes.
She is super sick, and she was probably the more dominant one, I would say, in the relationship. So I'll let you cover her.
She goes against the norm.
She goes against the norm. And I wrote down another big exception, Eileen Wuornos. So if you can remember, if anybody out there has seen Monster, which I actually haven't, she skyrocketed in pop culture when Charlize Theron played her in this movie, Monster. But also because she was the first serial killer the media paid attention to and portrayed her, as being as deadly as a male serial killer, killing like a man. So this is what I think she was actually, if I remember reading right in one of my notes. Oh yeah, right here. The lack of awareness in the public eye of female killers would attribute for her being incorrectly called the first female serial killer. But really, it was just the fact that, like I said, she killed like a man. She killed outside of her comfort zone, which really, because she killed outside of her home. But I wrote down too, she was also kind of a transient. She didn't really have, she was kind of a vagabond lifestyle.
So it says, just because I have my computer here, that she was a prostitute, a former prostitute who murdered her clients.
So yes.
Or is that just the movie?
No, that's exactly right. I mean, she had a horrific childhood. I can't even imagine the stuff that she went through.
Yeah, we should dive into this.
We really should. She was abused left and right. She was kicked out of the house. She was treated like it breaks my heart, her backstory. But then yeah, she went on to basically prostitution because she needed to figure out a way to survive. And then she started picking up these men, and she would kill them. I think she claims.
So it says that she was brutally raped and beaten by a client. Mm-hmm. So she kills him in self-defense.
That's what she said. It said her story changed back and forth, but again, we really probably need to dive into this one because it's interesting. Because again, she killed outside of her home. Yeah. She used a gun, like would be more of a male style of killing. She killed strangers instead of close friends or family. And she killed for personal gratification or revenge. She also left her victims on the side of the road, which is not a typical female move in any way.
Is she still alive?
No, she was killed.
Executed.
She was executed. She was put to death, lethal injection. And she said she's going to be back, though. I remember reading that. She said she's coming back. Big mothership, like, what's that movie? Independence Day?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So.
Wow. We need to dive more into this. I remember the movie coming out, and I remember in a short blip at that time kind of looking into it more, but it's, yeah.
Well, and I thought it was funny, too. I read that she became a cultural icon unlike your average Black Widow killers because, and I quote, she defied stereotypes and did not kill demurely as societal norms dictate that a woman should. So I guess Psychology Today has a sense of humor because I thought
that's ironic.
That was interesting. Yeah, so I mean, I think we pretty much covered everything that I had except for some other random things here, but I did come across one that I think I want to do, and that's the Countess Elizabeth Bathory. She was seen as possibly the most prolific female serial killer. And this was in the late 1500s, early 1600s. So this was a long time ago. So she was, I'll just give you the quick rundown. She was a countess in Hungary. After her husband died and left her in charge of the castle and surrounding village, it was said that she tortured, sexually assaulted, and killed hundreds of young girls and women. Lore has it actually that she bathed in their blood to stay youthful. Your guess is probably as good as the next. And then a notebook of her victims was discussed when they were kind of deciding what to do with this woman. And it was said that she had roughly 650 names written down. So that's an incredible list of possible victims. And she was never tried for her crimes and was made to basically stay on house arrest until her death. But, I mean, and so my notes on her was that she obviously didn't kill for gain. I mean, she owned half the land, and she was in this big castle. But the one thing that I noted that was interesting about her, and again, I might cover her, so I don't know how much I should say, but she had suffered from epilepsy as a child. And back then, you know how they had their weird... well, yeah, maybe head trauma. I didn't really think about that. But the cure for epilepsy was that when you were coming out of your fit or whatever, you had to take in the blood of a non-sufferer. So they were like giving you blood, and then at the very end of everything, you had to like basically consume a chunk of skull from a non-sufferer. This was how they treated, you know how they were back then. They didn't know what the hell was going on.
Skulls lying around.
Sure. I don't know. Or maybe they just lied and said, like, here's, and it was something else. But I thought about
There's
that.
me in science. Head trauma.
Right? You're like, head trauma.
She's having seizures. She's banging her head around on those rocks.
Yeah. I mean, hey, I'm sure, right? Castles are just made out of stone. Just
That's
dropping.
Crazy, though.
I'm sure it probably wasn't very...
Skulls and blood.
So, maybe this was her way of avoiding epilepsy, or... you could go down so many different paths, but I don't know. So, and also there was, of course, Madame LaLaurie, right? She killed and tortured for the pleasure of it, or experimental purposes, or whatever. Both of them didn't need money. They didn't need anything. So, truly, if Bathory was as prolific as they say, I mean, that's insane. But again, kind of like the lipstick killer, I was going down the rabbit hole with her, and I don't... There's even part of me that's not even sure she committed the crimes. So I would like to dive into that and explain why.
I think you should.
And then lastly, the only other thing that I had was just signature versus MO, right? So MO is something that the serial killer needs to do to accomplish their end goal, right? Such as picking up hitchhikers or impersonating an officer, or, somebody in the service industry. And then obviously as the MO evolves, they improve, right? They improve in what they're doing, they adjust. And this is how they, like, serial killers in general, male or female, can avoid capture. And, of course, this kind of comes back to what you said about, males on average can avoid it for about 4 years. Females usually have a criminal career of 8 to 10, but some 30 plus, right? And then there's probably so many more out there that we
don't even know
about.
They've never been caught.
So, yeah, so statistically speaking, if I'm speaking your language, women are better than men at killing.
Yeah,
and I don't know if that's something that I want us to be better at, but
no,
apparently
not really. But I think it sounds accurate.
I don't want to say better, but just
they don't get caught.
Yeah, smarter about it as far as if you're going to be a serial killer. So, and then there's signature, which is something that the killer does not need to do, such as binding, taking trophies, posing the body after post-mortem. But it's the signature that's usually a tell of why the murder was committed, not the how, right? Like, unlike the MO, the signature remains consistent. So, I love the profiling aspect of all of it. So I thought that was really cool to dive into. But what's crazy is that the murder for female serial killers is often misinterpreted as part of their MO. But actually, this is what I was telling you earlier, the killing aspect is not even always necessary to attain whatever they're trying to get, the goods, the profit, whatever. But for female serial killers, it actually is easier for them to kill because they just don't value human life the way that you or I would, And I feel too, with everything that I've read, just kind of a blanket statement, men, women, whoever, they do it because they want to, right? That's the end all be all, period. We can discuss why and nature versus nurture until we're blue in the face, but really ultimately serial killers kill because they like it. They want to. They need to. It's who they are. They just do it because they like it. And I don't think there's any other reason than that, right?
No, I agree. We can talk about the different methods in which they kill, or how they find their victims, and how long it takes for them on average to get caught. All those lovely statistics. Oh, but you're right. And the end all be all is they kill because
it's easy for them. They enjoy it. It's something that they want to do.
It brings them it fills a void that they need filled.
Sadly, Oh, I did write down this too, that men often start in their 20s, whereas females not later. Until their 40s.
Yeah, later.
So I thought that was interesting. Right? Oh, and then the whole organized versus disorganized, where, we talked about organized killers carefully choose, their victims. They plan ahead. They bring their weapon of choice with them. Their restraints. They take the victim from the scene and dispose of the body. They're more intelligent, keep a tidy home, and usually are very personable, right? They charm their victims. And then, of course, disorganized, the very opposite, less intelligent, usually loners, super sloppy. They just act on impulse. They live in pigsties, drive, filthy cars, and have a scattered job history. And what I thought was interesting is that females are usually organized, but the FBI created another category altogether to explain female serial killers as mixed. So they're organized because they're planners. They know their weapon of choice. They conceal the evidence of their crimes. But they're disorganized in that they know most of their victims and they leave them at the scene.
They don't clean up.
Right, they just, but it, like
but they
you
often
said,
don't have to because they're smothering babies in their cribs or they're poisoning elderly people. So they don't have to clean up.
Right. It fits their method. What do you think? Which one's scarier?
I think females are much scarier.
Me too.
Because they're calculated.
Yeah.
I mean, well, maybe calculated isn't scary. I don't know, but
note to self: do not put me in a home. we gotta have a plan for the future. This is probably why my dad's always like, growing up, he's always like, nobody better put me in a home, right? I can't tell you how many times I've heard that from him, and now I know why. Because he knew about these people.
I'm the opposite. I was like, I'm not staying with you kids. You guys are a bunch of slobs. I can't wait till I can live in a home and get away from you people.
Right? And now you're like, oh, Susie like, Sunshine down the hall is trying to kill me. She's spiking my pudding.
Oh my gosh.
I don't know. I'm going to be worried about it, though.
No, I agree. I hope that I don't know. Yeah. Shit. I don't know where we're gonna end up. And I don't know who we can trust, but it still fascinates me, and that's why we're here and why we're talking about it.
So hopefully you guys got a few tidbits out of that, and you know what? Let us know what you want to hear for bonuses. We want to hear from you guys.
Or if you don't like bonuses,
just say, you know what?
Stop bonuses.
Nice try, but that bonus is not gonna work for me. But hey, we gave it a shot, and we were thinking that our next one, what was it going to be? January, February? I can't remember.
It was going to be March.
Was it March?
And it was going to be
profiling.
About profiling. Yeah. So that is female versus male serial killers, and now you have flipped the script.
I do. I have a really good flip the script. So my good friend that I went to college with, played volleyball with her, super sweet, love her to death. Her whole family is they're just awesome people, right? They're this big Italian family, and they're amazing. She grew up in Kalamazoo, and not too long ago, well, it feels like not too long ago, but it was probably more like 20 years ago, right? Maybe 15, after she finished college in Michigan and got married, and her sisters and everybody were married and everything, they all picked up and they moved down to Florida, and they live within like a couple blocks of one another. So 2020 hasn't been great for everybody, right? But so for her dad, he just got a new lung transplant. So he needed this to survive. And this whole backstory on why he needed the transplant in the first place is crazy. I remember going over for dinner one night with the family. They always invited me over for dinner. They're like the sweetest people. And he was telling us the story of how he and his brother and sister went to this school. And I don't exactly know what state or whatever the school was in, but it caught fire. And he, along with some of his other classmates, were standing at the windows, like lowering the kids out to safety. And from what I remember, everyone got out okay. But because of the smoke in the building, almost everybody that was in the school that day has had this lung issue and has passed away into adult. Yes, like it was just so bad. He lost his twin brother.
Like burning asbestos at that age.
I think that's exactly what was going on. So, I mean, pretty much everyone that was at that school that day passed away from this same, if they made it into adulthood, I want to say it started affecting them in their like 50s, 60s, that kind of a thing. And so he needed this transplant. He rocked it. He got the lung. He's home. He's better. It made me so happy. I was kind of following along on Facebook, and the whole neighborhood got together, and they did like these big bright ribbons on the trees to welcome him home, just to say like we're so happy you're here and congratulations. And then Lisa, she just had her third little baby last week.
Oh
yeah, so it's been a really happiness for them. So 2 miracles, her little girl and her dad, and she just posted a picture of them sitting together, and I thought, oh, my heart.
That's precious.
Yeah, so I'm kind of living through the joy of what they're going through. And then her other sister just got married, so they have a lot to celebrate this year.
That's great.
Yeah, so it's been a great year for them. So congrats, Lise.
Congrats. We're very happy for your dad and your sweet little baby.
Oh yeah, the whole family. I'm sure they're just so thankful for all of their blessings this year. It's amazing. So that was a good, I thought that was a good heartwarming flip the script, just so you all know that there's some really good things going on out there. And yeah, so then when we see you guys again, we'll December, have a story for you.
A real one.
A real story.
And I have a good story.
Oh,
and I cannot wait to tell Sarah
you
about
keep
it.
telling me.
So in December, we're doing kind of like holiday homicide type. I don't want to call it a theme, but
yeah.
We're going to talk about unfortunate tragedies that happen around the holiday season.
Yeah, it sounded like a good one for this year.
It's a good one. I promise you guys. You're going to enjoy it.
I can't wait. I'm almost...
It's got 2 parts to it.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I almost don't even want to... I haven't researched yet for my story, and I'm afraid to because I don't want to come across...
I don't think you're going to come across
this
one.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
I really don't think you're going to.
God, how do you find these amazing stories? I dig and dig and dig, and you always find like this, oh, I found this awesome story that nobody's ever talked about ever. It's just amazing. And I try so hard, and I'm like, oh, I got this one for you. And you're like, oh, yeah, that one. Okay, bring it on.
I unfortunately.
But I love it, too, because I can surprise you.
You usually give me more, like, facts that I didn't know, or you straighten out something that's been a little bit more gray, and I'm like, okay, so that's what was said, you know?
Yeah.
So you fill in the gaps. I appreciate that.
All right, cool. I'm good for something. That's great.
Stop. All right. Good night, y'all.
Yep. Good night.